Good morning, United Kingdom. Good morning, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. The Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, drive time session with the famous, the Amos, the Mus, the Mixer, the Ixer, the Fixer, the Uber, the Shuver, the Mover. Lakhi Singh, the man in the square mile, guy who gets things done. If it's your business matter or your property affairs, he will fix it for you, whether it's himself or through one of the network of solicitors, insolvency practitioners, accountants, property experts, commercial lenders, anything and everything to do with property and business. Lakhi Singh can fix it. And good morning to you, Lakhi Singh.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Yeah, how are we doing? You're doing well. And what's the weather like there in the United Kingdom, sir?
It's meant to be rainy today, tomorrow, for most of the rest of the week.
Excellent, excellent. Raining. So rain obviously has its benefits. No rain, no cornflakesy. So cornflakesy means a lot of rain. So always look at the bright side. That's what I say. So the saying of this week, keep your eye on the vision and trust the process. Obviously relates back to the strong managerial and processing skills that Lakhi Singh has probably acquired over his many years in business. And obviously he uses those disciplines and the disciplines of accounts and finance and keeping his eye on the numbers, doing the stress tests. He keeps those disciplines, focuses on his vision, and trusts his process to get him the goal. We have a lot of interesting conversations over the few weeks. A lot of stuff around the buy-to-let mortgage industry, where it's going in terms of leasing contracts and the old-fashioned ASTs, regulation, the affordability of properties, negative equity, the underlying shark under the water of the property market, as well as commercial lending and regulated lending. So we've had lots of different people. Yesterday we had Mohsin on, a bit of a philanthropist, I would say, less of a businessman, a man who's trying to help cure the problem. And maybe the problem is going to become like the pandemic, so great and huge that even his organization may not be able to cope with it. 8 million, he says, are 1 month away from becoming homeless. Very scary statement. But nevertheless, I assume if it's not accurate, it's nearly true. And even then, it's a large number. So, Lakhi Singh, keeping your eye on the vision and trusting the process. What do you say to that?
Well, I want to make another point that just comes up now, which is what people don't realize is even though our friend Mohsin yesterday was told us something that's quite hard hitting, 8 million people potentially on the breadline. Can you imagine if that's what's happening to the individuals as an overspill of the COVID-19 and the economic climate? What about how many businesses are impacted in terms of their ability to keep up with their payments? Because if that's the overspill, so that's 65% 65 million population, 8 million, what's that as a percentage? Maybe that's
10%,
6%.
just over 10%.
Yeah.
About
So
11, 12%.
over 10%. So in the same way,
12%.
I would probably say if that's the overspill, then one can only imagine how bad the bloodbath is likely to be for businesses as well, because going to some of the high streets.
It goes back to one of our listeners, Cam. Mr. Cam said that the after effects of the furloughs and the bounce back loans is going to be humongous. A lot of these businesses are literally working off bounce back loans, but there's no business there. They're just taking the loan on. And I think another professional in your midst, Lakhi, people you know, hinted to us that there's going to be approximately around 60% bankruptcies or insolvencies. Is that right, Lakhi?
Yeah, I think they said that 60% of the people that have been taking out the loans, bounce back loans, aren't going to be repaid. And so the government behind the scenes is going to have to set up a task force to do the collections. So whoever's taken up the offers will also then have to be accountable as well. So it's not a free ride as some people may think. So that's one part. So the second part is what is really going on in terms of business. How bad is it going to get? I think there's about 600,000 people that were furloughed, if not more. So you can, I think the way things are going, I think the writing's on the wall that things are going to tighten. As a quick example, I met somebody after about 3 years playing hockey yesterday, who's a property buy-to-let landlord. This is the conversation I had. I said, "How you doing? Everything all right?" He goes, "It's all going really well, mate." I said, "Okay, that's good." He goes, "But I did have my properties empty after during COVID-19, but all of that's sorted now." I said, "Okay, well, have you thought about interest rates going up?" He goes, "Can they really go up?" So that was the first point. I said, and he goes, "No, I really haven't thought about it." I said, "Okay, well, have you thought of putting your properties, which I think has got about 10 buy-to-lets, have you put them onto fixed rates?" He goes, "No, I haven't." I said, "Have you thought about cashing in now? Well, the property prices are still somewhat good. There's a bit of a bounce in the market temporarily by the stamp duty cut. Have you thought about those things?" He goes, "No, I haven't thought about it at all." I said, "Okay."
Okay,
said,
well,
that's fine.
that leads to an interesting question. I'm going to stop you there. We'll continue with the conversation you had with this person. We have a question come in. Somebody asks, "Will I lose my house if I'm in negative equity?" A very important question. We're going to go around in a bit and discuss that. Morning to Sonia. Morning to Cam. Morning to Amar Ali. Morning to Amina. And morning to, I think, one more person, John Smith. That's right. Good morning to everyone. Bright and early with us, 8 a.m. So, yeah, continuing what you said. So he said, are the interest rates really going to go up? Then what did you say, Lakhi?
Well, I said to him, I can't say 100% they're going to go up, but the chances are more than 50% they'll have to go up some stage. So have you even thought that there could be a problem? Have you actually put anything in place to deal with that problem? Have you got any backup cash? Have you thought of selling half your portfolio?
Isn't that question isn't that answer a bit of a false answer or incorrect? Because you said it's more than 50% chance they've got to go up. Once they're operating at 0.75, was given to us as a correction the other day. How is it possible
0.1%.
that you say 50%? I mean, 0.1%. So how is it possible it won't go up? And you're saying it's more than 50% probable? Isn't there only one way, and that's up? Or are you predicting negative interest for a few months or years?
Well, the thing is, I'm not
Or is
predicting
it that
anything.
you're saying,
What I'm doing is I'm just
yeah, but I
giving him
mean,
the indicators so that he can make a
okay,
decision to protect himself. If
mhm.
if the scenario of interest rates going up happens, then he's going to get wiped out. So the question is,
Okay, so the question is, well, obviously a question that's come forward. If someone has negative equity, if they've got nice portfolio, they've got lots of good cash flow coming from them, and they're saying, look, it's all sweet, happy days, nothing on the horizon. But let's suppose something does happen, because I do believe the mortgage companies themselves have added interest rates. They've brought them up a bit. So is that a precursor to the central bank? Because obviously, if the mortgage companies are putting up their interest rate, they're probably trying to cream out a bit of extra money from their mortgagors before the central bank raises its interest rate. Because when the central bank raises their interest rate, the mortgage lenders won't have too much money to make out of it. They'll get wiped away with the mortgagors, because if the mortgagors can't afford to pay with the central interest rate, then the net result's going to be repossessions or LPA receivers. So is that somewhat a sign to people who think interest rates aren't going up, that they are going to go up? Because if the mortgage lenders are putting their interest rates up, they're obviously doing it for a reason, and the reasons can't be anything but the fact that central bank rates have gone down. They're thinking, well, we're losing money by keeping our interest rates static. We must vary them and bring them up a bit so that we make the money. So even though the mortgagor would have had a better cash flow, the mortgage companies are saying, nope, let's put that into our pockets. Isn't that like a sign or a precursor to the central bank's interest rates going up, Lakhi?
well, I think the media and the government, as well as the banks, are in cahoots to just keep the consumer thinking that everything is, very rosy, or nothing's really going to happen that's going to be a problem. But the reality of it actually almost dictates the facts that you just stated almost dictate the direction of the market, which is interest rates hikes are inevitable. So the market falling in quite a drastic way is inevitable. So because those things are there isn't really anything a government can do to change market factors. They can artificially patch it up, but those cracks are still soon going to start become very apparent, and I think they already are for a lot of people. So, as an example, even quite a large organization that was meant to try and get a refinance on a £5 million of commercial property, they were trying to refinance out, but for the last 6 months they haven't been able to. So they've had to come back to Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, to say, Lakhi, how do we get out of this mess? So we just took that case on in the last 24 hours. And the question now is, they couldn't really find the existing lender that they had to continue with the finance. So they had to find a completely new lender. So even though in normal circumstances a year ago, that would have been considered a perfect loan. Out of about 30 lenders we've spoken to, there's only about 2 or 3 that we think will seriously consider that type of loan in this market, even though the gearing of the asset is close to 50% or less than 50% of the value of the assets. So there we go. That's the state of the market.
So is it true then, Lakhi Singh, that even if people feel that they've got a residential house, that it can't be touched by the lenders if they've got negative equity, if that negative equity becomes realized? Can they go after your house? Does it happen?
It's a lot more commonplace than people think. And what happens is a lot of people have a very rosy view of what the banks and the government and that they will do. They think that everything's there to help them. So what they've got to do is when the government's desperate to actually fill up its coffers, and the banks are desperate because they're not making any money on the 0.1% interest, they are not really going to be taking any hostages.
Okay, we've got a good morning shout out from Neil Soha and Maxine Grimm. So good morning to you guys as well. Okay, if it's become commonplace, what's going to happen, Lucky? I mean, we were talking to Mohsin yesterday, who was talking about the fact 8 million people, and he was saying about 350,000 people who were technically homeless, and about another, I think, 10,000 who were on the streets. Is it going to get worse? Is it going to? I mean, how does the government help after they give these bounce backs or these furloughs? What happens then? Because nothing's happening, is it? I mean, the market is dead. If it's not the fact that people are being given to stimulate the economy, the virus is stopping everything happening. So it doesn't make sense. Every which way but lose situation, but every way is lose. So you got the virus issue now. So and you got these new rules that have come into force about gatherings and stuff. What do you say is going to be the outcome of this? What happens? Is it going to go back to early 1900s during the before the Boer War or after the Boer War for the First World War? Is it going to be that? As people have predicted, it's going to be ration tickets and income per family, and it's going to be dole queues, and people will not be able to afford the basic necessity. What's going to happen, Lucky? What do you predict? What do you say? Where do you see the vision? Where does your vision of your business fall in with what's going to happen in the market? Are you geared up for this, for the market, for what's going to happen?
Well, first of all, whatever you're saying in terms of dole of queues or food rations, some of that is already going on, because those 8 million people, if they're living on the breadline, they've got kids, they've got there's elderly people who've got very little income, say, and they're struggling, so they're having to live off food parcels or charities which are getting a, let's say, food together, and then you can go to these centers and pick up food. And what they're doing is anybody that's vulnerable or is, can't, is not mobile either, then the council's giving them vouchers to go and pick up food from the local food center, or it's only available to certain people.
Okay.
So certain councils are actually offering that service.
You've seen, I think, in some of your presentations about 5-6 years ago, you were showing the homeless camps in America, and these aren't made up things. They're actually stuff that's not being reported. So in cities like Chicago and Kansas and Illinois, you've got these tent cities, they're called, being made up outside of the main city in the rural areas, wherever there's a greenery or grass. People are setting up camp and they are basically living a basic lifestyle. So where do you think England's going to go in the same direction? Is that what's going to happen in the United Kingdom, or is it a good safety net? Are people going to get rehoused? Are the local councils going to pick up the tab?
Somewhat, I think the United Kingdom already has that sort of structure, because we're a lot more of a social society. The government has pumped in hundreds of millions of pounds, if not billions, into housing associations. So here in America, because it's sort of like a 0 to very rich type economy. Either you got nothing or you're really rich. There's the in between, the mentality is less. Here, if you haven't got much, then the government does actually offer quite a lot. So in reality, a lot of the people that are in that situation are being helped by lots of charities. Probably half of them are sort of self-funded, half of them are funded by the government. So I think you are going to get a huge sort of hole, because the charities can't really collect money easily because of COVID-19. So Oxfam and these sort of charities were really busy before in a normal high street. But in this type of environment, they're not even getting the funds in. And if they're not really out there, they're getting limited funds compared to what they were before. And I think they're really worried about having the ability to, to be able to help as many people as they were before. They can't really help people if they're only getting half the funds or less the funds they've been getting before.
Okay, I mean, we're talking about the here and now working people who are already in the system working, businesses. What about the impact on the next generation? Like, your child's gone to uni. What's going to happen when he leaves uni? What do you think there's going to be a future? Is there going to be a job out there for kids? Are there going to be jobs, or are they going to be walking into a difficult environment, economic turnaround and turmoil?
Well, you're going to get maybe a couple of thousand people applying for one job. So I think the only way you're going to be able to find a job, let's just say, fairly easily, is if you are a specialist or you're in a government job, because the government is a key worker in this market anyway. But as let's just say COVID-19 sort of slows down and hopefully gets eradicated in the next 6 months or a year, the impact of what's been left is that there's going to be very, very little employment. So choosing the areas which are still let's just say critical to any economy are going to be very important. So things which are maybe high fashion may not be as easy to get money from, because a majority of people won't really have that much money to spend, so their disposable income is going to be limited. You're going to have a lot more people wanting the necessities. So if you're involved in, let's just say, the larger organizations like Tesco's and Morrison's, they will actually be pretty busy because they're going to have to feed the nation at a minimal cost to keep everybody going.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be employment, but the employment's going to be skewed, and you may not necessarily be able to go into doing things which were, let's just say, which had a high level of recruitment many years, about a year or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's going to be a fundamental shift. So I think you just have to be wary of what's happening in the market. So everybody hopefully will find something, but it may just mean that they're going to do strawberry picking, and they may not have a choice.
Okay, we've got a shout out from our famous Bob Singh and one from Neil Soha as well this morning. Hi. Okay, it seems as if, however we try to look at what's going to happen in the immediate future, and if we don't look at ourselves and look at the kids and what they are going to inherit, it seems bleak. Is there any upside to all of this, Lakhi? Can you look at the rainbow within this? Is there a rainbow? Tell us something that's going to come out which is going to be a benefit to people. Is there going to be the light at the end of this tunnel? What do you see as being the ray of hope after the storm?
I can't really see anything positive coming out, any of it in real terms, if I'm very honest, because if you've got health is a major issue, a lot of people are dying, then you've got financial issues, people are sort of financially crippled, and it's impacting their ability to house themselves. And if there isn't really a housing system to support them, then unfortunately, no, I can't. If I'm very honest, I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can possibly say that maybe emigrating from the United Kingdom and moving to a country, a third world country, you might be better off, because you may be able to. You're probably going to be a person in demand if you're a if you're a professional accounting professional here, say, or a particular job that's you're not really getting what you want. So moving.
So what you're saying is, if you go across a third world country and buy like a herd of sheep, you'll probably be more wanted than the local farmer.
Yeah. So I think the point is going back to basics is probably the light at the end of the tunnel. So we've been sort of, let's just say, we've normalized commercialism in our minds, having everything processed, lots of plastics. So basically, going back to basics will probably be the light of the tunnel, which is going back to farming, organic farming, having your own, making your own food. Not necessarily.
Surely, like you say, I think what you're saying sounds all fluffy and great, but even to leave the United Kingdom and go somewhere is going to take money. If you haven't got any money, you can't leave. That's the first thing. So there seems an impracticality in what you're saying. The second problem is going to be if you've never basically grown a potato before, you're not going to be able to grow enough potatoes to fry your chips. And then you're going to have to fry chips on coal fires or on wood burning fires. And if you've never used an axe before, you're not going to be able to go out and cut the wood to burn your fire. So it sounds idealistic. It's a very grand way of looking at change, but I don't think people who are living in a matured economy are going to just close up and go chain shop and then start working tilling the land. So it doesn't work I don't think that's like something that's going to knock a lot of people off their seats and think, right, pack my bags, I'm leaving for South Africa, or I'm leaving for the Middle East, or I'm going to leave for the subcontinent, India or Sri Lanka, go back and start tilling the land. It's not going to work. But we've got a couple of comments that have come through from the things you've been talking about. Neil Soha says, be wary of ticket vouchers that come from the council. Obviously, he has experience to say they can be fraudulent, they can be fake. And Bob Singh says, yes. He says, yes, Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. It is quite a scary time for people who don't know if they are going to be able to put the next meal on the table. It's very difficult. I think it's quite easy coming from a mentality of a successful businessman like yourself to look at these things. But I think a lot of people who are sitting there on the negative equity trap, who are just praying that the government doesn't raise the interest rate, and they don't realize that the interest rates are not in their control, because the indicator for interest rates will not come from the Central Bank of England, it will come from the Federal Reserve. So once, and there's a common saying that once America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. So as soon as America says interest rates switched on because our economy is recovering, and remember, their economy is dependent heavily, I think it's more than 80% dependent upon consumerism and spending. So they can afford to put interest rates up because they know the businesses are succeeding, people are starting to buy again, therefore they can say the economy is recovering. Not quite so in the Europeans and London and UK, where the market is slightly more sophisticated. It's not just consumerism or consumer confidence, or spending that ascertains recovery in the market. There's lots of other factors which are more sophisticated than pure consumerism. So, yeah, I think it's a worrying time. I think for someone to go into the mindset of somebody in that position could be quite scary, quite worrying, to know that they are one paycheck away or one meal away. How can society change? Is society too selfish? Is that the reason? Have we become, in developing and becoming a developed economy, have we become less selfless? Are we now selfish because of materialism? How many of us have been able to hand the keys over of our car, or give someone, a homeless person, a room for the night? Not because the government says so, because we see so. It's a very difficult situation. It seems as if there's going to be a rewrite of rules, of moral values. It also suggests that the underlying tone for the developed world being capitalism somewhat has failed as a model. Because, you were talking about the other day about the struggle between capitalism, socialism, and social governments and capitalistic thinking, etc. But surely isn't the issue that money that gets produced by a country, by a government, is been wrongly spent? I mean, if I was a business and I had an FC who decided to spend a lot of the money that the company made in projects abroad, and when we say projects abroad, we can call a warfare project, we can call the third world aid project abroad. So if I had nephews spending more money abroad, but I couldn't see the result of it, surely then the aspect of spending money in the country for the people, budget controlling, stopping all these fanciful projects like HS2, which is billions of billions of pounds sterling, and yet we rely upon inward investment because of that capital outlay. Surely that much money being spent on people and housing, aren't we giving our vote for our security? Are we not giving the vote to ensure our peaceful existence and self safeguard and having that safety net to put food on the table? If a lot of that money is being misdirected in campaigns and spends in things we've not even approved or agreed upon, then is it not why we've got an upsurgence in a right-wing environment in a lot of the developed countries? You've got the fascist movements that are going on. A lot of right-wing parties are taking shape. Are they not actually saying what I'm saying, but in a more aggressive way, that the money that is made by taxpayers or paid into the government by taxpayers should be spent on the taxpayers and not be spent on money abroad? Are we not really falling into the trap of being overcommitted outside of England? And is that not why we don't have enough money to fix economy of England? And we're relying upon things like quantitative easing, which is a false economy, false money being printed to be pumped back into the economy. What say you to this, Lakhi Singh? What is this all about?
I think obviously with something like COVID-19 coming up, it's something unexpected. It's not something anybody probably thought in their wildest dream that something like that could happen. So I think whatever decisions the governments, Western world have committed to, building a tower, building the O2, or doing the HS2, or building a new airport, whatever it may be, are sort of infrastructure projects which themselves actually probably employ people as well. So there's a yin and a yang. So that's going to create employment, although there's a massive spend, and it's going to bring inward investment as well, because there'll be money flowing in and out of the economy. So, but I agree with the point on the whole, that if you've got a national emergency and the whole carpet's been taken away from not just some of the population, but nearly every business and nearly every individual in the country is impacted one way or the other, then where do you draw the line between helping your own country to get back on its feet? Because it's it could be considered like a bit like a tsunami type situation, where in the past when you've had tsunamis abroad, the government have put money together and provided aid. But now nearly every economy needs aid because of COVID-19. The United Kingdom itself probably is going to suffer, but you may also argue that there's third world countries out there which have got very poor sanitation, no hospitals in certain areas of the country. The amount of people dying there may be in the hundreds of thousands because of what they've got. So the question is, where do you draw the line between the UK and providing aid as well? So I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. I'm not into the political side of it. I think anybody who's suffering at a day-to-day level, somehow they haven't thought about it, and so the nanny state in some ways does need to possibly help them if they can. And if they are doing projects which are going to mean that they're pumping let's say hundreds of billions into certain projects, then why wouldn't they sort of put those on hold and then look at really working at a human level first, and then worrying about the longer term strategy. So I think it's a very good question. I'm not sure whether the government or anybody's really thinking about things from that point of view. And if they did, then I think and there's that sort of reassurance that that's what's being done, then we wouldn't really need to be having this conversation, because everybody would be feeling a lot more comfortable that there's going to be money flowing, and they'll have the ability to have the continuity of the lifestyle they're used to, or have at least some resemblance of what they've had in the past. So, but I don't really see any of that happening as easily as people
well,
may
interesting.
think.
We've got lots of comments coming through. We've got Sonia, we've got Mr. Soha, Anil. I mean, they say, yeah, it's a deep discussion about the chaos that's going to hit us. There's issues or comments around. It's all about tightening your budget or becoming spend thrifty and reducing that type of over expense, curbing your lifestyle. Obviously, it's deep and it's difficult to understand. I mean, Bob Singh says, he's seen before COVID a rise in people going to the local gurdwaras for the daily food, the langar as it's called in Punjabi terms, to have food. Now, if you actually turn around that little microcosm, a myopic picture of a gurdwara, and say, is it not forcing people to come together? Is that not the one of the lights at the end of the tunnel? Is it not making you have to think about your brother and have to think about your family, and the family is now having to think about its community, and the community is having to think about its city or its town? Is it not really that there's going to be a redesigning of politics? Because I know you're saying, look, we're not into politics, we understand. But capitalism has been created through politics. Otherwise, capitalism, in the good old language, is greed. Okay? You've got a goat. Bob Singh's got 2 goats. You want 2 goats. You're going to go out there and try and find someone who's going to pay you the highest price for your goat, so you can go out and buy 2 billy goats. So you can say to Bob Singh, well, in 6 months' time, I'm going to have 2 goats as well. That's greed. And some people call it aspiration. But surely, in a system that's self-contained, everything is regulated. And you're right, nanny state, we say. We say we're depending upon the state to take care of all of our affairs. But at the same time, we don't like to be regulated. We don't want to be regulated, but we want the state to take responsibility. We are somewhat in a flux, just like the economy is in a state of flux. We don't know where things are going. Money is being pumped in. The money doesn't seem to really have a chance of being paid back. How long can they keep pumping money in? Because that money in is somewhat like putting everybody on a respirator, expecting that by the time the virus has left us, they are back in a position to still be breathing as an economy to continue business. But economies aren't like switches, are they? And people aren't like, they're not like circuit boards. You can't just switch them on, switch them off. Right, I've gone out and cleaned up my restaurant. open the door up, and all of a sudden people are going to rushing back to come back and sit in my restaurant, because you have created an environment, and government has a responsibility to create an environment which is true. Isn't there a contradiction as well? That if the government isn't reflecting an environment that is sustainable at the beginning, surely it's going to confuse the masses. Like we had a few weeks ago, the protests in Hyde Park and Central against the laws that have been brought in under the banner of the virus, COVID. Isn't there a major flux? Isn't this exactly the same environment there was back in the early 1900s, just after the Boer War, before the First World War? Is this environment now being created for something which is going to be even more damning? Where is it all going? I can't see where there is a solution apart from an extreme breaking up of whatever we've got and re-establishing the norm, but one norm that will be technology led. So this goes back to the question I asked you: where's your vision, Lakhi Singh? And I remember we were talking to you maybe yesterday, and you were saying, well, prop tech is the future for you. Are we going to become a more techie society after this recovery?
Well, talking about techie society, a lot of people are now sort of wallowing in, rather than wallowing in their problems, they're trying to distract themselves. So I know at least about 4 or 5 people, including myself, that literally social media becomes a bit of an addiction, because it's you just want to sit there and just press buttons and not want to really have to think about the inevitable. So watching TikTok, for example, is like watching Britain's Got Talent on steroids. So those sort of things are like welcome distractions for people. So I think a lot of people are sort of beginning to bury their heads in the sand about what's really going on. They don't really want to face up to the health issues. They don't really want to face up to the fact that they're going to, they're in the private sector, maybe in hospitality, and they're going to have to suffer for a year or two. So I think there's a...
We've had someone like, what's his name, Neuro Singh, who's been on, very practical gentleman. Did he stress test? He said, look, under 2 years, I can't see my events production company coming on back online. That's the type of practicality you expect, but I don't think everybody's like that. And then I think he may have a steady income stream from other businesses he's got his fingers in. So he may have the pleasure of saying, right, okay, I'll put that on hold. I'll put that on hold for now. Mothball it, wait for a year or two, and then I'll reconnect it. Doesn't it go back to the fact that majority of the community, the majority of the population are not business people, don't have more than 2-3 baskets to put their eggs in. They've only got one basket, and that's 9 to 5. They're one check away from becoming homeless, or at least penniless. Very, and a lot of these decisions, I think, about how they're trying to fix the economy are coming from people who are probably disassociated with the common public. They're back office accountants and policymakers who are on a decent income. They're not going to get affected because the government is a good paymaster in difficult times. And they are taking decisions about things they have no knowledge of. So is it that easy to suggest that the rewrite will be one of choosing? Or is it going to be just like a tsunami that comes in, and the forces of capitalism, the market forces, will wipe the slate clean, whether you agree with trying to deal with negative equity and taking your head out of the sand or not. The market forces will come in and they will strip you of everything and anything that you have, because there is only one way, and that's up. The interest rates are one of the key fundamentals of a capitalistic society. I pay you money, I give you money, you use that money to spend. The spending of that money goes into someone's till. The till means they're making money. They charge interest for the loan they took out. To pay back the loan, they need to make money. They pay interest back. The banks make money. They use that money to lend more money to people who want to buy houses. There's a cycle there. And without interest, there is an inevitable crash, because that is one of the fundamental underpins for a capitalistic society, and that is making money from money. It seems like we are in the quiet before the storm. Isn't that what the feeling is? Like you saying the other day, the physical appearance of the Square Mile or London seemed to be somewhat like a ghost town. People didn't seem to be out and about. You're in Mayfair, assume you're making moves in the city itself, and you can feel and sense that people are not really out there. There's not a hustle and a bustle that takes place in the Square Mile anymore. How do you see this time that we're in now? Is it really, do you have an essence of the feeling that it seems to be somewhat like the quiet before the storm?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the finance houses in Mayfair, this is behind closed doors, having discussions around how they're going to be managing their hedge funds and restructuring based upon the market. So just as a sort of a rule of thumb, anybody involved in property now, relying upon high street lending, or relying upon, let's just say, some of the major buy-to-let lenders and bridges, they are scared blank. Yeah, they're scared shitless. Yeah. So the reason that they're scared is that they're scared of the unknown. They don't know which way things are going to go. So one of the things that they want to do is they don't really want to deal with anybody that's got any sort of problems. They only want to deal with people who've got really deep pockets. That's the only time they'll consider lending, even 60, 70% loan to value. But anything.
Okay. Question for you then, Lakhi Singh. Let's suppose the banks are keeping it nice and clean. We understand that. Neil Soha says obviously he's got agricultural land, gentleman with deep pockets. Obviously he's got his hands across the world. So he's farming, I assume, in India. So all of his kitchen comes in directly from Indian agriculture. So it doesn't need to go to the local Tesco's. Excellent. Good idea. If you can afford the postage and packaging of your potatoes. Danny, very deep, says there is going to be a realignment of social values, maybe in a growth industry to get into, somewhat reconfirming Mohsin Ravjani's model of social housing, people living in buses. I think that's a growth sector, because where there is a fall, there is always someone's rise. And I think in need comes demand. And that demand becomes the new capitalistic value, the new value chain, the currency of business becomes the need. And the need being social welfare and social housing and support systems and value-based chain models. But even though we're going to have that, we're going to become a tech-led society. Prop tech will be. Is it not all about the changing of hands of business? The people need to get out of the property market. People who are sitting on bad stock need to offload. They don't want to offload with all the negative debt. They want to get rid of the negative debt. They want to get rid of the problem but offload. They want to now go back to their 9 to 5, or they want to invest back into property at the right value. That exchange of hands, that changing of hands of business surely has to take place. And that's only going to happen if people have an understanding of a solution or where to go to. Presently, the systems available to us, bankruptcy, are obsolete, because bankruptcy only works if you have anything for the official receiver to take in control and pay themselves and pay the trustees. If there isn't anything there which has got money in it, a difficult place to be. We'll talk about that topic hopefully in the future, bankruptcy and what it means. Is it obsolete? Does it work? Those people who suffered because of bankruptcy and obviously the turmoils they've gone through. This question goes to you, Lakhi. You've had those traumas. Did that actually, looking back at it now, isn't that what happened to you earlier on in the cycle? That's why you're so strong now to be leading the way with your company business and focus. Had you been still in with your property portfolios and growing and developing, and had you managed to deal with the banks and their managers, and you still had those properties, would you be where you are now today with such clear vision and focus about?
Well, the fundamental point here is that if you've got nothing in this market, then you've got nothing to lose. Whereas if you've got something, you've got a lot to lose, because you can't necessarily have the values in your assets there or in your business. Well, depending on the type of business. If you're a tech type business on social media, then you're probably going to be flying, like Zoom. So there's certain growth industries, but 95% of individuals and businesses, if you own a residential house, you live in it, you bought it for capital growth, you may find that you don't get any capital growth for the next 10 years, but you may get quite a sharp fall. So my sort of is coming to the end. I think we've got a couple of minutes, but my key point is, if you've got an asset in this market, I would actually sell it now while the going is good. Get your cash out, so you've got cash in your hand. If you do want to go and live in Africa or India or whichever country that suits you, Bali, Thailand, amazing places, you can actually go and buy a little hut for £5,000 and then live happily ever after, because the lifestyle is really good. And
talking about lifestyles, we're giving a big shout out to Tina. Obviously, Danny, I think we got your point misrepresented. It says, I'm sorry about that. I think next week we're going to attempt to have our listeners, viewers, call in with their questions. So they're going to have a 5 or 10 minute chat with the speakers and the panel whenever we get the chance next. So my question is very simple. Last minute, Lakhi. Totally agree with it. Totally agree with the fact that you're saying, need to think outside the box. You can't move. Most people can't move. Should they create a Mali in the back garden? Should they put up some palm trees and sip pina coladas in the rain in Essex and think about the good times to come?
I'm not sure about the question there, but I think that could actually be the solution. You could just create your own. You can create your own paradise. The paradise doesn't have to be broad. The paradise can be just being your locality. You know, you could treat your garden as paradise if you wanted. So I think the point I'm raising is don't be fooled by what's going on around you, thinking that everything's going to be hunky-dory. If you want to, if you make some strong decisions now, then that may set you up for life. Because if you've got £1 million house and the debt on it is only 200, then
Agreed.
why not sell it now, get 800?
Radical decision is what is needed, Lakhi Singh says. I'm sorry there, Lakhi Singh, we have to cut you off. We're in the last minute. Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. We've had an interesting topic today. I think we will attempt next week to start inviting listeners in randomly or at will to take on a question and ask the speakers and the panel. So hopefully from next week onwards, we're going to ask people to come in, ask their question directly, which goes to the fact that Danny asked an important question. I'm sorry, apologize, couldn't understand it properly. We'll do next week or tomorrow. We will ask your question because it's an important one. And then next week, we'll see everybody. We'll attempt to get everybody to dial in and ask their questions. Thank you so much for listening to the drive time, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. every morning. Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. Speak to you tomorrow, Lakhi Singh. I think we may have a guest speaker. Not sure. We'll find out tomorrow. Take care. Speak to you soon.